to another video. Today we're going to be going over lists. If you haven't checked out the last video on conditional, so let's go over lists. So first off, what is a list? It's an ordered set of information. And you can kind of think of it the same way you would think of a list in real life. Like you have your grocery list, maybe you have a list of people that are allowed a certain access to things. So in Python though, a list can consist of all types of variables. So it can include strings, floats, it can include booleans, which we haven't covered yet, but we will. It can include integers, include anything. So let's go ahead and create our first list. So the syntax for it is we're gonna have to give it a name. And let's say we want to create a list that just contains a bunch of different names, right? So we'll set our variable name equal to names, and to indicate that this is a list, we're going to be using square brackets, and inside the square brackets is where we're going to include all of our items. Okay, so our first item is going to be our first name, and we're going to include my name. Second name we're going to include, we'll add, let's see, Robert. We'll add Leslie. We will add Thomas. And we will add one more name. We'll add Ruth. All right, so now we have a list of names starting with Hunter, Robert, Leslie, Thomas, Ruth. And normally when you number a list, you would kind of number it like this. You would say, okay, well, the first item on my list is Hunter. The second item on my list is Robert. The third item is going to be Leslie. That's kind of how we intuitively think of a list, right? Well, in Python, it's a little bit different. In Python, actually in most programming languages, we start counting at 0. So if we want to know the location of Hunter, that's actually going to be 0, and Robert's going to be 1, Leslie will be 2, Thomas 3, and Ruth will be 4. Now there's a few things we can do with a list. First off, let's just try printing it out. Let's just print out the entire list variable and let's see what we get. So let me move my terminal up and let's run it. And we get exactly that. We get our entire list just printed out to the screen to us. Okay, well, what if we want specifically Robert? Well, as we can see from our comment above, Robert is at location 1. Now to print out just Robert, we have to print out names at location 1. And to do that, we just have to specify, okay, I want to print out something from my list, which is names specifically, and we'll use that to indicate, or we'll use square brackets to indicate which specific location. And then inside those square brackets, we will pass in the location that we want to access. So if we want to access Robert, which is at location 1, we'll just do names at index 1, just like that. And if we save our file and run this, we will get just that. So we'll get Robert printed out. And as you might guess, if you want like Ruth printed, you would just have to change this to a 4 and print it out, or go ahead and run the program and you'll get Ruth. All right. Now, what if we printed out, what if we tried something like, well, what is names at location 5, right? What would that give us? Well, if we run our program, we're going to get a common error. Missed my parentheses. Oh, nope, I just didn't add my square bracket. That's not the common error that we're going to see, but that is also another error. That is a syntax error. So we're going to get an index error, list out of range. Now what that means is essentially in this list, we have a range. Our range starts at 0 and our range ends at 4. And if we try to access anything outside of that range, so if we try -1, or actually -1 will work, but if we try something like 5, 6, 7, that's out of our range and we're not able to access it. So we will get this index error, list out of range. Okay, so let's talk about how we could potentially add additional items to this list, right? So there are a bunch of like helpful methods that are a part of lists that we can use if we want to add items, remove items, maybe add an item at a specific location. Maybe we want to count the number of specific items in a list. There are a bunch of different methods we can use. So the first method we're going to talk about is append. And what append does is it essentially just adds an item to the list. And to append an item, all you have to say is, okay, which list do you want to append to? In this case, I want to append to names, and I want to just use the append function. And then inside of parentheses, I can specify the value that I want to add to my list. So I can add Matthew. And now, if I print out the entire list and run this, I will have a new list. Well, it's the same list, but I will have a list with Matthew at the end of it. And now I have something with a location 5. So if I print out names at location 5, I'm not going to get an index out of error or out of range error. I'm going to get Matthew because Matthew is now the 5th location. Okay. So let's say I want to remove an item. Well, just like append, I can just say, hey, names.remove, and I want to remove the name Hunter. And then let's go ahead and just print out our entire list again. So now if I run this, clear my screen. There we go. And then let's run this file, and we get a list without the name Hunter. And as you can see, Robert's location changed from index 1 to index 0, and Leslie moved from index 2 to index 1, and then so on with the rest of the list. Okay, so that's two methods. We have append, which adds an item to the end of the list. We have remove, which removes whatever specified value that you pass within the parameters, within the parentheses. And we also have, let's say we want to make an insertion in this list. So I want to add something in between maybe two different values. So we removed Hunter. So I'm just going to copy and paste this. So we have Robert at 0, Leslie at 1. Well, let's say I want to insert something in between the two. So I want to add something at location 1. Well, to do that, I can just say names.insert. And then this takes two parameters. So the first parameter is going to be the index at which you want to add to. And then the second parameter is going to be the object that you want to add. So what value do you want to add to this list? So I want to add to location 1, and I specifically want to add the name Amy. So if I type it just like this, and if we print out names one more time, go ahead and save my file, clear my screen, we are going to get a list. So this was our original list, and this is our list after we inserted Amy in between Robert and Leslie. Okay, so that's append. Again, append just adds to the end, and I'll make a note of this. Adds to the end of the list, and then removes whatever value you pass in the parameters. Insert takes two parameters. It's going to take the location, or the index, I should say. So the index and the value, which is also an object. Okay, so append, remove, insert. There are a couple others. And then if you're using like Visual Studio, or any other like IDE, you'll probably have these like suggestions that pop up. We can also pop a value. So let's see what pop does. So if I do names.pop and just print out names and save this, let's clear my screen before I run this again. And we should get some, wow, this is very slow today. I feel like I've been saying that a lot lately. Okay, there we go. So here is our original list after we added, let's see, this one is after we removed Hunter, and then we inserted Amy in between Robert and Leslie. And then, let's see, this list is missing Matthew. All right, so, and that's what pop did. Pop essentially removes the very last item. It just pops it off. So this just removes the last item in a list, and we can store that value if we want. So let's say we wanted to make this into a variable. We could say last item is going to be equal to the list.pop. And then if we print out what the last item is and run this, we're going to get Matthew right here. So it's going to pop the value from the list, it's going to take it off, and then it's going to store it in this variable we created, and then we're just going to print it out. But it's no longer a part of the list anymore. Okay, now let's say we wanted to make a copy of this list. So there's another function we can use where essentially we can copy all the values in one list and put it into another. So to do that, I can say copy of names, that's the name of the variable I'm going to go with, and I'm going to set copy of names equal to our original list dot copy. Now this is different than this. You can also do this, but that is different, and we'll briefly go over that. So if I say copy of names is going to be equal to names.copy, and I print out, let's say original, my keyboard is original list, it's going to be, names, and then we'll also print out copy of list, which is going to be copy of names. Yeah, just like that. So now if we run this, we will get, there we go. So we have our original list right here, and then we have a copy list. As you can see, they should be the exact same thing. But let's go ahead and try to add something to our copy of names. So we'll append, and then I'll also show you something else you can do. So it doesn't have to be just names. I can add a variable or a number for some reason if I wanted to. And then now we'll just go ahead and print out these two again, but right underneath this. So let's save this, clear my terminal, and run it again. And look at that. We have our first, our original list and our copy. Then we appended 2000 to copy of names. And then as you can see right here, we have our original list and then our copy of list with 2000 inside of it. So they're not connected whatsoever. Whatever we do to copy of names is not going to be linked to our original names. However, if we did this instead, if we said copy of names is equal to names, then we ran this, and you can partly see it on my screen. So as you can see, it actually, by setting them equal to each other, whatever you do to one list is going to reflect in the other list. So in this case, our original list now has 2000, even though we only added, or we only appended to copy of list. But by setting it equal to each other, you're essentially taking their memory and computer and connecting them, or you're pointing them at each other. So if you make one change to one of the lists, it's going to reflect the other. So to avoid that, you just use the copy method. Let's see if we want to count the number of items. So let's create another list called nums. And inside this list, we have 23, 24, 22, 17, 22, 98, 78, 23, 28, 100, and we'll do one more 23. If I want to count the number of 22s, I can create a variable. 22 is going to be equal to nums.count, and inside count, I'm going to pass the value that I want to count. So I said I want to count how many 22s we have in our list. So we should have 1, 2, we should have 2. So 22s, and then if I print out 22s right here, clear my screen, and then if I go ahead and run this, we will get exactly that. So we have 2 right here, and 2 is just the number of 22. So if I do, see 101, I want to check how many 101s do we have. So we should get 0. Oh, you can't even see my screen. So let me move that up. So yes, so we counted 22s, and we got this printed out because there were 2 22s in our list. Clear my screen. Now I want to count the number of 101s. And as you can see, there are now 101s in our list. So we should get 0. And if we run that, we get 0 right here. I will make another video where I go into depth a little bit more on lists and then some cooler things that you can do with lists. But I hope this video was helpful. Yeah, see you soon.